Hey there, and welcome to this final scene, scene number 4 in retro in motion design, retro style in motion design. My name is Cameron. I'm glad to have you here with me today as we finish this final scene out. We're going to do 1920 by 1080, 30 frames per second, and we'll stick with 5 seconds of animation. And for this scene, I want to create like this kind of sun effect that we saw in some of our examples. Like you can see here, here. You see it a lot. So let's do something like that with like an interesting grid pattern leading up to it. But we'll make our grid a little bit different. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click on the circle here and it creates an ellipse. And what it's doing is when you double click, it's just making a shape that fills your composition. So because our composition is wider than it is taller, that's why it makes it an ellipse. And to make it a perfect circle, all we have to do is unconstrain the proportions and then just type in like 500 by 500. And there we go, constrain the proportions and then maybe make it a little bit bigger, like 750, something like that. Perfect. So this is our sun. Well, we'll call it the circle. And that works just great. We'll turn that off. And we're also going to make a rectangle. So we'll double click here. And this will be the stripes, if I can spell correctly. Stripes. And for rectangular size, we are going to make it, the width is just fine, but let's make it pretty thin, maybe like 30 or maybe thinner. Maybe we can try 20. We'll see how that goes. We're also going to add a repeater. So add repeater. And this repeater is going to have something like maybe 15 copies. Under transform, we're going to make it so that it doesn't scale on the X, but it scales on the Y. Something like this. And I also want the scale to be slightly bigger. And you can see what's happening there is it's smaller and it gets a little bit bigger. So maybe we'll make the size a little bit smaller, something like that. That's kind of cool. And that's good for now. We're going to duplicate the circle. Bring the circle to the top here. And actually, let's not do that. Let's just bring the circle to the top. Let's turn it on. And let's Shift Command H so we can see what we're doing here. And let's bring this guy to the top here. He's a little bit big. So we'll go ahead and just scale him down. Maybe something like this. If I turn on my proportional rule of thirds here, maybe he's, well, you know what? I want the sunset to kind of be, oh man, this is a tough one. I'm thinking maybe the sunset actually is here. And we're only going to see about half of this. So we'll take it back to 100%. We're going to bring our stripes down. So maybe they're starting somewhere in here. And we're going to open up the repeater and make sure that the scale, something like that. And I want it to kind of fill in around the halfway point here. And then we're going to set our stripes to alpha matte, the circle. And we can turn the circle back. Actually, we can't do that. We need to duplicate the circle. That's why we had to duplicate it. And for this guy, we're going to make sure it's on, and we're going to select our rectangular tool here. But over here, we want to make sure we select mask. And then we're going to draw. And this is just going to create a mask here across the top. So now we have the top of our sun. So we'll name it top sun. And this will just be called matte. How about sun matte? And these are our stripes. Now we do need to have the stripes move a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll hit P for position, set a keyframe, and maybe move forward, you know, a few frames, something like this. We'll kind of zoom in here on our little timeline area. And let's have these guys actually stop about there. And we'll have them start maybe here. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at this guide here. So I'm going to bring this guy down so he lines up right with that guide. Go to my last keyframe here and make sure that this second line here follows the same rule. So right there. So if we hit N and we preview this, it should look something like that. Now we could have it be a little bit slower by bringing this guy maybe down here. And maybe extending this guy out to about a second. And because we want it to loop, we want it to be just below that line. Now what's throwing us off is we see some of these lines up here, which we need to kind of cover up some of this stuff here. So let's bring down our mask so it covers up that line. Let's preview this. And then I also want to get rid of the area below this line here. So what we can do here is draw another mask and make sure our mask tool is selected. And we're going to draw right here and we're going to say this mask is set to subtract. So now we don't see anything below the line. And we're going to need to fine tune this just a little bit. So the top sun here. Let's see where we're at here. I want these lines to extend a little bit higher up into this area up in here. So we're going to open up the repeater here. And this is all just trial and error from what I've found in my testing. There's no real super easy way to do this. Just messing around with some of my positioning. And you can see there's still a little bit of a hiccup right here at the top. So one way I might fix that is decrease the size of these guys. Just trying to create like a nice loop here. And you can see it's still just kind of wonky. So we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full bars there, 5.5 really. And here we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 full bars. So see, there's the wonkiness there. So we need to make sure that we see the same number of bars here is that we see here at the end. So again, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One way you could do is just kind of adjust to this point here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This might be a little bit closer. Yeah, there we go. So now we have a loop, right? Now there is a very slight hiccup right there, I can see. And that, let's see here, if I do nudge up 1, that's actually worse. I'll go nudge down twice. And now we got it. So there's our sun. Looking pretty good. One thing we could also do to this is we can actually bring up, and this is going to mess up our starting point here, but we could go right there. So we can see it just a little bit more of the top of the sun like that. It looks a bit nicer, I think. There's different ways you can do this. I mean, you could have more of the sun come up here. So maybe we go even one more higher. You know, maybe even one more higher. I like that better. So now all we have to do is come to our top sun here, go to generate gradient ramp, and let's put in some good values here. Maybe like nice kind of hot pink here, and then we'll sample that color and then come into like, you know, maybe like a purple. Copy this gradient ramp and apply it to the stripes. And I want it to be a little bit more severe. So maybe something like that. And kind of bring this one up as well. You know, I think I still want, maybe let's change this to more like a blue. We'll copy this color. Come back to our stripes. Paste it in here. Yeah, it looks nice. Turn off our proportional grid. So now we've got our looping sun. Looks good. Go ahead and save that. We're going to now create another new solid layer. And we'll call this the grid. And again, I'm going to go back to a plugin I like to use from YanoBox in Nodes 3. And I'm going to go into the presets here. And I'm going to show you how powerful this is because you can really change up a lot. I'm going to select this sci-fi pentagon tunnel. And immediately it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like this does not look good. So let's turn off some things. Let's turn off lines and text. So we just have our nodes. We don't need to animate the phase. And we don't need to animate the rotation. So just kind of moving at us. That works. Let's also come in here to the transformation. And we need to kind of level these guys out. Maybe 20%. Maybe 18. And there's probably a parameter in here that tells me like, hey, you can go back to, you can adjust right here to the rotation. And I think maybe it's this actually. Nope, it's not this one. But I do want to animate that. I'm going to alter option click and I'm going to put time times 20. Let's see if that works. So you can see it's making these nodes kind of move. So let's make it faster. Yeah, that's actually a little bit too fast. Let's go 100. So they're kind of coming at us. That's pretty cool. And then let's also go in here and let's change this to the purple, kind of bluish color we had. And it's set to complementary here. So we could do single color. It's all purple. Triad. That's kind of interesting. A shade. I think maybe we'll go with the shade here. And let's turn off proportional grid. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and increase the Y value to something interesting like this. And maybe a little bit more. I want to get these dots out of the viewpoint of, I don't want to see these dots so much over the sun. If we see them a little bit, that's okay. Now, if we play with the depth range here, so it's going to get rid of them over the sun there. Something like that. And now what we can do is we can create another new solid. and we can call this flare. And there's a lot of different ways you can create flares, a lot of different plugins out there to create them. I'm actually going to use Sapphire, which is my go-to set of plugins. And I'm gonna type in flare, and I am going to use this flare. I'll load the presets up. And like I said, you can use any type of flare. The point is just to use some type of flare, just to create like a horizon line. And I'm gonna pick this one right here, load it in. And there we go. I'm gonna set it to add. Bring them down somewhere in here. And I'm gonna go over here to flicker and add some flicker. I'm gonna actually solve this layer here so I can kind of see how much flicker is happening. And it looks like there's not much. I mean, you can see a little bit happening there. And let's also go ahead and add in some atmosphere here. You can see the atmosphere there is being added in. It's pretty nice. Also going to go ahead and scale the height of this down. I'm going to kind of shrink it, kind of like smush it down like so. And I think I added a little bit too much atmosphere there. And we're going to sample some of this purple. And that's looking pretty good. I still want to change some things here. I'll bring in some of these rays. We're going to edit the lens here. Okay, so I want to get rid of a few of these lines. I think those I definitely want to get rid of. And that. I just want kind of like this horizontal line across. I'm going to click OK. And here we are back in here. And now I think I can bring the vertical height back up. Kind of create this interesting horizon line here. It's kind of what I'm trying to do. Maybe duplicate it again. Layer, new. Adjustment layer, and here is where you can kind of bring in some of your effects. You can try things like signal again, which is a favorite. That's a little intense, so maybe we'll go in and try RG Universe Stylized AV Club again. Much more subtle effect here, but like I said, very powerful. Maybe delete that second flare. Call this effects. Maybe add a little bit of post noise in here. Now the particle system's flying at us. It's still too much. So what I want really is for these particles not to be up here at the top and just kind of be on a single line. So I need to, I think, decrease the Y. Maybe. And kind of play around with some of these rotation factors here. So maybe 90, 90, until I can see something happening. Solo this. So you can see here what it is. It's like a tube there. So let's go down here to replicate. Let's turn this off. So now we've just got this single line here. So now let's try and rotate it again. Sometimes it can be very challenging just to get the right effect to work. So now it's flat. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Maybe bring it closer to us and drop it down. Now we're getting a little bit closer. Maybe increase the Y. There we go. Now we're getting much closer. And we'll turn it back on, and we're going to drop it down so it kind of matches that horizon line. And just kind of playing around with some of these parameters here. Because it still looks pretty terrible, right? So I think what we need to do is we need to take the top sun, the stripes, all of that. We need to bring it up to where it lines up kind of with this edge back here. Bring the flare up as well. And we will do that here. Go back to our grid. And maybe go back to single color. Or we could try complementary. That's just a little bit intense though. Maybe something like that. And I can see the edge here. I don't want to see the edge of that. Let's spread out the Y here. And let's take a look at this. Yeah, it's a little bit more interesting, a little less to look at for our grid. I like that. Something we could do here as well is we could actually duplicate this layer and kind of bring it down and go back into our transform here and just drop it just below. T for transparency, drop the opacity way down like 30% and maybe give it a little bit of a blur. Maybe like a 3. So it kind of gives us like this interesting ground plane. And we could take our you know what? I just realized I kind of screwed up that. So I need to make sure I have the sun, the matte, the stripe selected, and the keyframe selected. And now I can kind of drag it up like this or drag it down. And keyframes aren't going to get screwed up. Well, something got super screwed up there. Let's see if this actually loops now. No, it does not. So we screwed some serious things up here. So I'm going to use my arrow key. See how this looks. Wow, I don't know what we did here. I'm just nudging with my keyboard here. just to get that loop back again. And then we're also going to add an expression here, Alt or Option click. We're going to go property loop out. And that's just going to say, hey, just keep repeating this movement when you go past this point. So we don't have to add any more keyframes, but it's able to loop at this point. But for whatever reason, this thing is still slightly screwed up. So we're going to make it go up a little bit more. Maybe here. And we'll go back to 1 second and just make sure it loops at this point. There we go. So now we're back to where we started, right? So we've got these this grid array going across here. Looks pretty cool. Not totally sold on the flare here, but all we have to do is, again, we use lots of glow. So we're going to do plug in everything, deep glow, put it over the top, and go to our inputs here and increase the input. Maybe something like 40%, 20% smoothing. Chromatic aberration, enable. You can see how it puts some edge right there, which is really nice. Turn it down to something like 0.5, 0.2. Bring in the radius. That's looking better. Something we want to do is maybe play around with the position of deep glow before the effect, which I do like that. I'm going to go ahead and bring signal back in. Go ahead and save. And we're going to actually take signal off, layer, new adjustment. This will be effects 2, paste. And we are going to really take down some of this distortion. That's one thing about this plugin that's kind of wonky, is that when you slide these numbers, they change very quickly, and you have to be really careful about that. Not too bad. I lose a lot of the flare when I do turn that on, though. See if I can bring this flare up a little bit in the pink side. And we'll try duplicating it again like we had previously. That's too much. Take that signal effect off. I think I like it better with the Uni AV Club. And let's give that flare just a little bit more of, let's slow down the speed. So it's going to be a little bit more of a pulsing feel to it now. And we can extend this out. And I'm still not totally sold on that pink. You know, we do see a lot of green here, so maybe it's somewhere in that green range. Maybe something like that. Yeah. That's kind of cool. Still not totally sold on the actual flare itself. Something we could do to actually create a little bit more of a horizon here is we could call this horizon, and we just create a mask there and make sure that the horizon color is close to this. F for feather, and just feather it a lot. And just start playing around with the mask shape. Kind of like it over the top of the grid. Just going to take down the transparency here. And now I feel like the flare is like too perfect. So let's go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, Gaussian Blur. And let's bring up that blur. Maybe somewhere in there. Let's also do the same thing here for the sun. So we'll do a layer new adjustment, Gaussian blur, and maybe like a 3, maybe a 6. Doesn't have to be a lot. Save, and let's check this out. So that's how it's looking so far. One final adjustment I want to make to this is now the pink of the sun just isn't working with all the colors we've brought in here. So we're going to take this and see if we can make this look a little bit more interesting with the color. I'm just sampling colors here. I'm just trying something here. But maybe it's more like in that green to blue range. That could be kind of interesting. So it's green to blue, and we'll copy and we'll paste. So maybe, so the blue is about right. So maybe in the green though, we need to just go. Well, it's really tough, because now we're back to that pink range. Which can look kind of funky. I'll try and copy and paste this one. Yeah, I'm just not liking that at all. I actually prefer that a little bit more. We're going to sample the horizon color. And maybe the top sun, instead of green, maybe it is more on that pink side. And then we just need to adjust. Okay, so one final thing I want to add here. I know I keep saying that, but let's go in here and let's add a new adjustment layer, and we're going to call this horizon blur, and we're going to draw a mask just across here. Because I'm looking at this and the sun here, the edge of the sun really kind of bothers me how sharp it is. So we're going to go to effect, and we're going to go to fast box blur, and we will increase this to something like 5. And then we're going to feather this. Something like that, maybe a little bit more feather. So you can see without and with, it's very subtle. It kind of helps blend in the horizon line here. So there you go, friends. That is the retro sun animation. Not totally sold on the colors here. The blue kind of muddies into the background a bit. I like the pink up here. The blue down here it's not quite right. You know, maybe actually, you know what we're going to do here? We're going to go on the stripes. We're going to go back down to the pink, and we're going to bring this guy here and this guy here. And I like that a little bit better. And we're going to take the horizon blur down to maybe a 3, like so, and preview this. There we go. Still not totally sold on this, but that's okay. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to let this one go. Thanks for watching this workshop on retro design, in motion design. My name is Cameron, and until next time, keep on creating.